Chapter 1 1984 by George Orwell 1949. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast, and in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of greedy dust from entering along with him. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. At one end of a colored posters, the too large for indoor display, had been tacked to the wall. It depicted simply the enormous face, more than a mattress weighed. A face of a man about 45, with a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features. Winston made for stairs. It was no use by trying the lift. Even at least time seldom working, at the present, electric current was cut off during daylight hours. It was part of economy drive in preparation for 8 weeks. The flight and several flights up Winston was dirty nice and had a very varicose ulcer above his right ankle, went slowly wrestling several times on the way. On each landing, opposite the lift shaft, the poster with enormous face gazed from the wall. It was one of those pictures who were so contrived that the eyes follow you about when you move. The big brother is watching you. The caption beneath it ran. Inside the flag, the fruity voice was reading out a list of figures which had something to do with the production of pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal obligate like a dual mirror which formed part of the surfaces of the right-hand wall. Winston turned a switch off. Voice sank somewhat, though the words were still distinguishable. The instrument has telescreen. It has called the code dimmed, but there was no way shutting off completely. He moved over to the window. Smallish, frayed figure. The mingonism of his body merely emphasized by the blue overall which were uniform the party. His hair was very fair, and his face naturally sanguine. His skin roughly by coarse soap, and blunt razor bladed. The cold of the winter had just ended. Outside, even though the shop window pane, the world looked cold. Down in the street, little eddies of wind, where wheels dust had torn paper into spurl. So the sun was shining and the sky at hush blue, and the skinning was colored in any aspects. The posters were plastering everywhere. The black mustache, the face gazed down in every commanding corner. That was one of the house-fronting immediate poses. A big brother is watching you, the caption said. The dark eyes looked deep into Winston's own. Down the street level, another posters, torn to the corner, flapped the fleetly wind, alternatively covering the uncovering. The symbol of INGSOH in the far distant helicopter skimmed down between the roofs, hovered for an instant like blue top battle, ducked away against the curving flight. It was a police patrol. Snooping into people's windows. The patrols did not matter, however. The thought police matters. Behind Winston's back, the voice from the telescreen was babbling away. The pig iron and the over-fulfilled ninth street airplane. The telescreen receiver transmitted simultaneously. A sound that Winston made at the level of the very low whisper. The pickup by, and moreover, so long he remained with the field of vision with the metal plaque commanded. He could be seen as well as heard, and one of the course of the way of knowing whether you were being watched at a given moment, how often or by what system, the thought the police plug in any individual wire was guesswork. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody at the time, but at any rate, they could plunge your wire whatever you plunge whatever they wanted to. You had to live from habit that become instinct. Its assumption that every sound it made you overheard and expert in the darkness of a moment scrutinized. Winston kept his back turned to the telescreen and was saved, though, as he well knew, even a back can be revealed a kilometre away from ministries of truth. His place of work toward a vast white above grim landscape. Thus, he thought that a sort of vague distance was London, a chief city of airstrip, one itself third most populous of provinces Oceania. He tried to squeeze he tried to squeeze out of some of the childhood memory and should tell him whether London had always been quite like this, where there always been vistas of rotting 19th century houses, their sides soared up like bunks of timbers, their windows patched the cardboard of their roofs to the corrugated iron that cracked in the garden and sagging all directions. On the bump sides were the plastered dust swirled in the air, and the willow herb straggled over the heaps of the rubble, and the places bombed and had cleared larger patches than they had sprung up the colonies of wooden dwelling like chicken houses, and it was used he could not remember. Nothing remained of his childhood except a series of bright little table acts occurring against, and no background, mostly unintelligible. The mystery of the truth, the mystery of the newspeak, and was something different from other objects in sight, and it was enormous pyramidal structure of glittering with concrete soaring up terraces up to 300 meters into air, from which Winston stood and then just possible to read, pick out on its white face its elegant letters, and the three slogans in the parties. War is peace, freedom is slave, ignorance is strength. The ministry of truth contained in its set thousand rooms grounded levels and corresponding ramifications below, scattering about London, and there was just three other buildings similar appearance in size, and completely dwarfed the surrounding architect, and from the roof of Victorian mansions, and you would see all four of them simultaneously. They were homes of the four ministries between the entire apparatus of government, and they were divided the ministry of the truth, and which concerns itself with news, entertainment, education, and fine arts, Ministry of Peace, and with concerns with wars, Ministry of Love, which maintained law and order, and Ministry of Plenty, which was responsible for the economic affairs, and their names in newspeak, miniature mini packs, and mini loaf, and the mini plenty. The Ministry of Love was really friend one, and then there was no windows in the all at all. The Winston would never been inside the Ministry of Love, and within the kilometre of it, and it was plain impossible to enter the except of official business, and then they are only penetrated by the maze of barbed wire entanglement and steel doors and hidden machine guns nests, and even the streets leading up its outer barriers and then roamed by guerrilla face guards in black uniforms armed with jointed trenchers. Winston turned around abruptly and then set his features into expressions of quiet optimism with its advisable to wear them with the facing telescreen, and he closes his room with the tiny kitchen. By leaving the ministry at the time of the day, he sacrifices lunch in this canteen, and then aware of there was no food in the kitchen except a hunk of dark-colored bread, and with God to be saved of tomorrow's breakfast, he took down from the shelf of the colonist with the plain white label marked Victory Gin, and gave it a sick and oil smellless Chinese as a cheese rice spread, and Winston poured out nearly teacupful, nerved himself for a shock, and gulped down like a dose of medicine. Instantly his face turned scarletly, and the water ran out of his eyes. The stuff like nitric acid. Moreover, it was slow swallowing on, and had a sensation of being hit in the back of the head with a rope club, and the next moment, however, the burning of his belly died down. The world began to look more cheerful. He took a cigarette from a crumpy pocket marked Victoria's cigarette, and then incautiously held it upright where Walpen's tobacco fell out of the floor. With the next more than successful, he went back to the living room and sat down as a small table stood to the left of the table screen. From the table drawer he took out the pen holder, a bottle of ink, and a thick quarter-size, a blank book with a red back and a marble cover. For some reason the telescreen in the living room was an unusual position. Instead of being placed, and it was normal, in the end of the wall, it could command the whole room, and it was a long wall, and then opposite the window, and then one of them the shadow, a cloth with Winston was sitting, which, when the flats were built, and probably been intended to hold bookshelves, by the ceiling in the cloth, keeping back, and then Winston was remaining outside the range of the glass screen, and was far aside when he could be heard. Of course, so long as he stayed in his presence, his position, he could be seen. It was a wholly unusual geography of the room that suggested his thing that he was not able to, but had to since suggest the book as he has taken out of the drawer. It was a particularly beautiful book, and then its smooth creamy paper, and then yellow by age, and it was a kind of had been manufactured at least 40 years past, and he could guess, however, the books has ever older than he had seen it lying in the window of frosty a junk shop and quarter of towns, and then the quarter and did not remember, and had been stricken immediately by overwhelming desire to possess it. The party remembered, and then supposes gone, dealing the free market, and then will be strictly because there was various things, and then shoelaces, razor blades, and then it was supposed to be held in any others, and then giving the quick glance and down the street, and then the splits inside, and then the book $2.50, and then at the time he was conscious of wanting of any particular purposes he had carried guiltily home and in his briefcase, even without nothing written in it, the compromising possession. And then the third thing that he was about to do was an open dairy. It was not an illegal, nothing was illegal. And since there was no longer any laws, but if any detected, it was reasonable content that it would be punished by death, and then at least by 25 years, and in the force of labor camp. Winston fitted the nib into the pen holder, and then stuck into the grease of the pen was archaic, and the instrument seldom used even for signatures, and he had produced one, and furtive furtive and with some difficulty simply because of feeling that beautiful creamy paper deserves to be written in a real nib instead of being scratched within the ink pencil actually has used to writing by hand. Apart from the very short notes, it was usually detected everyone could into speak, writing with the words course impossible for his present purpose. He dipped the pen into the ink and then folded from a second. A tremor has gone through his bowels to make the paper was a decisive act. In the small clumsy letters he wrote, April 4th, 1984, he sat back, a sense of complete helplessness and then descended upon him. To begin with, he did not know which, and certain this way was 1984. It must be round about the date, since he was fairly sure his age was 39, and that he believed that he had been born in 1944 or 1945. And then it was never possible nowadays to pin down the date within the year or two.